Hey baby, it's FrazierDanger here. Today I got something I want to speak to you people about. Bring it into the fold, kind of express some very unpopular opinions on the subject of wage growth and stagnation. Now look, the average individual realizes that wage growth in this country has remained stagnant for about the last 20 years. I mean, we really haven't seen that much wage growth in the country overall. In the time I've been alive and working, the minimum wage has really just hasn't gone up. Not at all. Now, some places are proposing radical wage growth increases at $15 an hour, which is effectively a 200% increase, which will result in rapid and devastating inflation. The thing is, when you do something like that, you have saved money that loses its value by half. You can't do that, because if the average minimum wage worker in the country is getting $15 an hour, that means that you're paying double what you were paying before. And we're forgetting about workers' comp and all that stuff. You're paying double what you were paying before to the individual worker for individual works. Now, what will happen is corresponding wages increases will result in corresponding product price increases and product service increases, and so on and so forth. So this bottle of water that cost $1 5 minutes ago now costs $2, and so on and so forth. And what you see is that the market will rebound in that case. Now, I believe that there's an inflation bubble regarding current wages. I believe that there is an inflation bubble regarding wages today. I think it's a reverse bubble in a sense, because it's not like things are too high, things are too low. But either way, there is a void that has to be filled. Now let me explain this void. For the last 30 years, and I'm going to go and explain all this in sort of a layman's way, or just kind of expressing what the matter of the problem is. The last 30 years, we've been seeing outside labor. Whether that outside labor is outsourced labor brought to the United States to work in agricultural positions and other domestic industries, or outside labor used to produce non-domestic goods and services, such as the average phone call to India where you get some tech service, or the average Chinese good, this little bobblehead, shirt says made in China, yeah. So what you see is the stagnation of wage growth over time that way. Now, the only people who benefit from this stagnation of wage growth over time are the rich, because they are paying the individual less. They are paying the individual far less than what they would actually be paying them if wages were allowed to grow over time. Now, the most fallacious argument I hear regarding the wage problem in America, or rather the job problem, is when it comes to bringing in outside labor to the job market, is that the average individual believes that these people are coming in and doing jobs Americans simply won't do. That's not the case. Americans won't do them for the prices that are being set because of the outsourced labor wages. Because wages are being set so low by this cheap outside labor, we can't compete because we have mortgages and bills to pay, which are predicated upon having more money than what an $8 an hour minimum wage job can pay. Now, to be frank on the matter, we need to stop wage stagnation by ending outsourcing of labor, whether that means outsourcing labor through bringing in non-domestic workers into our domestic economy, or bringing in non-domestic products into our domestic economy. Now, without getting too far into Hamiltonian economics, there are ways to do this. Alexander Hamilton had a great theory regarding creating an industrial infrastructure within the United States at the time, because during the early parts of our post-colonial economy, we were very, very much entrenched in buying foreign-made goods because our industry just wasn't up to par. So, what Hamilton did, proposed, was tariffs. I believe this was actually used, tariffs to basically incentivize production of U.S. goods by disincentivizing purchasing non-U.S. goods. This allowed U.S. industry to grow and boom within the economy, which then led to the 1800s or 19th century industrial economy within the United States, which was very successful. Now, when you're talking about situations like that, what you've got to realize is that once we got out of that situation, we were able to eliminate those tariffs for the most part. But we had them for a long time. That was why people referred to us as a isolationist country in a lot of ways, because our domestic product had little to do with anybody else, except where absolutely necessary. If it was capable of being produced inside the United States, we did it. We produced it within the United States because that was what was necessary in order to incentivize a modern industrial economy within the United States. Now, moving forward back to today, contemporary discussion, we as a people have disincentivized domestic industrial labor through the use of trade deals and also through the use of migrant workers to a smaller effect. Now, this doesn't actually affect industrial problem, but it does have an effect on the economy as a whole, which does reflect upon the industrial economy. Now, what you do is you end, again, the incentivization of outsourcing of goods and services and, the outsourcing of labor as well, for the good of the entire domestic economy. You see, the stagnant wages that we are seeing today, and I think I might be repeating myself here, but I think it's worth repeating, are the result of low wages being paid out to outsourced individuals coming into this domestic economy and working in agriculture and, again, domestic industry. That's worth repeating. It's worth repeating because it says something about the situation. Over time, you have these wages which would have gone up to meet the demand of the average American citizen regarding what they are willing to work for over time and stay with the job. You have disincentivized the people from continuing these jobs. You have absolutely wrecked the domestic economy through these means. How can an individual pursue a job to better his life if that job is incapable of bettering his life? There is no reason that an individual going out every day, working a job at minimum wage, should not be able to support themselves in a home. I mean, that is, if we are living in an individualistic economy that reflects an individualistic mindset, an average individual's job should be able to pay for room and board for himself, as well as some other minor amenities, and not to call cars and everything a minor amenity. Those things should still be part of that room and board situation. We could just call that a general cost of living, and then over and above, you should be able to afford some level of recreational, monetary, and amenities. I guess what I'm trying to say in the expression of this whole thing is that if we do not stop incentivizing globalist tendencies of non-free market orientation, because they call them free trade deals, but what they really are is just sending money out the door, we will end up with nothing. And of course, we're realizing this now. We're waking up on this, and people in general are pissed off. The Bernie Sanders people themselves supported this idea. But what's frustrating for me is the amount of people who are willing to simply throw all that out the door and say, Americans aren't willing to do these jobs. They are. Get over it. Pay them more. Pay them more by getting rid of the outsourcing of labor. You can re-incentivize this by simply reintroducing tariffs and just halting the flow of foreign workers. Now, the average individual is probably not aware of this because they don't understand macroeconomics. And I'm not going to make any pretense of actually really comprehending macroeconomics to any full extent. But I have taken a few courses in these things, and I can just extrapolate from what I'm seeing in the modern economy what is going on here. Now, I'm not going to repeat what I've said already about the stagnation of wages in regards to why it's happening. But now that we have the stagnation of wages, we have a huge bubble. It's like a negative bubble, really. It's like negative atmospheric pressure. And when you try to fix the problem by reintroducing the appropriate wage levels for the average individual in this economy, it's going to be like if I sucked the air out of a tube and suddenly the tube just got opened up. It's just going to suck it right in. It's going to bring it right in. And that will be the resulting inflation that we will see. Now, this inflation was held back for years by keeping wages low. So the natural course of inflation did not occur. And what happened was that the rich got richer and the poor got poorer. And everybody's going, why is this happening? Why is this happening? Why is this happening? Well, that's why it's happening. And now that the average individual is coming to terms with the fact that the reason this is happening is because we are outsourcing everything and getting wages and the stagnation of wages through cheap labor and cheap services, which, by the way, the cheap goods were the only reason why this was even feasible. Everybody would have immediately seen it if it wasn't possible through bringing in cheap goods from outside the country. Now people are seeing this and they're going, well, we need to do something about this. Well, the only thing to do about it is to slowly, incrementally, year by year, increase wages across the board every year until we hit about $12 an hour. And $12 an hour is what I'm talking about today. And in 10 years, it might have to be $14 an hour. $15 an hour is too much. And it's definitely too much. It's definitely too much to just flip the board and say $15 an hour. But we have to get away from the wage stagnation. I should not be getting the same $8 an hour that I was getting 8 years ago. It's impossible. I mean, are you joking? Wages have obviously stagnated in that regard. You can't tell me that over the history of the years when gas used to be 20 goddamn cents a gallon over 40 years, that stagnation, that inflation doesn't work like that. That inflation somehow is slower than that. Now, this is the part where it becomes sort of incoherent and you kind of regard me as like, hey, what are you talking about? Well, what I'm trying to express to you is the deep problem that we as an American domestic economy have with outsourced labor and outsourced domestic labor. If we don't end it now, it will end us eventually. We simply can't afford it anymore. The average person is in so much poverty now. I'm not going to get into who this benefits long term because I'm not going to step into that little puddle of ideology that us versus them, that we're just going to concentrate on fixing it. And I think the average individual can relate to this expression of how this works. Now, if you feel the need to call me a racist because I don't want domestic labor being replaced by foreign labor domestically instead of you're an asshole. Go fuck yourself. Go fuck yourself. All right? I don't give a shit what you think about racism in regards to the national economy. It has nothing to do with racism. I don't give a shit who the fuck you are. I don't care. I do not care. I have no opinion whatsoever. My girlfriend's grandfather came over here from Brazil. He did everything right. He is one of the best guys I've known in regards to this. He built duplexes. He had several businesses. He did good. But we let in too many people. And suddenly we're downsizing. And you realize that most of these people are Mexican, which is fine. Being Mexican's cool. I love the fucking food. Not exactly that big of a fan of the culture, but if you can't see why, you're an asshole too, because people are dying over there every day in big numbers, and it's kind of people getting beheaded. That whole shebang. You don't hear about people getting beheaded in America every day, do you? Except where the fucking drug lords go. Now, just to be absolutely clear on this, they send out $20 billion a year. That's $20 billion just leaving our economy. Just going outside the fucking door. Boop. And honestly, that I think is just legal workers. I mean, just come on. You can't. Let's just ignore the social service issues, the entitlements, the abuse of entitlements. Let's just ignore the fact that these people are being used for votes, first by the Republicans and then by the Democrats. Let's just ignore the fact that the Latino community as a whole, just like the African American community, has been abused by political ideologues attempting to garner favor from minorities, which doesn't help anybody because it's predicated upon false pretenses. Let's ignore all that. Let's just wages have been stagnated by outside labor. Period. Outside labor with international or non-domestic production of goods and services, and outsourced labor in regards to domestic outsourced labor. Keep in mind, if we don't end this, your wages are going to continue to stagnate. If you think it's bad now, wait a few years. Wait another 5 years at these levels. If we continue to introduce low-wage labor, we will continue to have this problem. Let the market economy rebound through Hamiltonian economic exercise. And we will see a return of industrial wealth in this country. And we don't have to do it the other way. We don't have to pollute. We have the technology now. We have the resources. We have the intelligence. Get rid of your ideology when dealing with the economy. FrazierDanger out, guys.